The lobby gleamed like a mirror, marble floors so polished they reflected the glass chandeliers above. Every step echoed in the cavernous space, punctuated by the steady rhythm of heels, briefcases, and the soft hiss of the revolving doors. The building, Vale Tower, was a monument to order and control, every detail immaculate, every employee drilled to perfection. And at the center of it all was Richard Vale, a man who built empires from spreadsheets and precision. He swept through the lobby like a storm in an expensive suit, a cluster of assistants trailing him with tablets and phones. The morning meeting with investors had gone sideways, someone had raised concerns about cost overruns, and Richard's temper was still simmering. He hated inefficiency, wasted time, wasted money, wasted potential. His face was carved into that expressionless calm that made employees step aside without a word. Maria didn't see him coming. She was kneeling near the elevator bank, polishing a brass rail, her cart parked beside her with a half-empty bucket of water. She had been up since 5, catching the early bus to make her shift on time. Her hands were raw from detergents, her back stiff from the endless bending and scrubbing. Still, she took pride in her work. The building sparkled because of her, though no one ever noticed. The elevator dinged. She turned quickly to move her cart out of the way, but her sleeve caught the edge of the bucket. Water sloshed over the rim, spreading in a thin, glistening pool across the marble floor just as Richard stepped out. He stopped abruptly, his expensive Italian shoe sinking slightly into the puddle. The faintest splash marked the perfect crease of his trousers. Maria froze. For a heartbeat, the entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. Then came the voice, low, clipped, and dangerous. "What do you think you're doing?" I'm so sorry, sir," Maria stammered, reaching for a towel. "It was an accident." An accident. He looked down at the floor as though it were contaminated. "Do you realize how easily someone could slip here? This is a corporate building, not a janitor's closet." She lowered her eyes, murmuring another apology. The assistants had stopped a few paces behind him, pretending to check their phones. The receptionist turned away, pretending to be busy. The air felt heavy with embarrassment. Richard's voice rose. "You people have one job: to keep this place clean and safe. One. And you can't even manage that." Maria's hands shook as she wiped the floor. "Please, sir, I didn't mean. I don't want to hear excuses." He turned sharply to one of his aides. "Call our. I want this woman removed immediately." The words hit harder than a slap. Maria straightened, her face paling. "Sir, please, my job." But he had already turned away, muttering to his assistant about standards and discipline. Across the lobby, near the cafe, Emma Vale stood frozen. She had come to surprise her father, her first visit home from university in months. She had expected to find him busy, maybe distracted, but not this. The scene unfolded in front of her like a cruel play, and she couldn't look away. The cleaner's voice trembled as she tried to plead. "I've worked here 10 years, sir. I can fix this, please." Richard didn't even glance back. 10 years, and still careless, he said, his tone cold as marble. "That's enough." The elevator doors closed behind him. Emma's chest felt tight. Around her, the lobby returned to its usual rhythm, phones buzzing, shoes clicking, but she stood still, staring at the cleaner who was now on her knees, blotting the floor in silence. There was something in Maria's posture, a quiet dignity beneath the humiliation, that made Emma's throat ache. She walked closer, unsure of what to say. Are you okay?" Maria forced a small smile, the kind people wear to hide pain. "It's all right, miss. He's the boss. He can do as he likes." Emma looked toward the elevator where her father had vanished. For the first time in her life, the man she admired seemed like a stranger. The tower he had built suddenly felt cold, hollow, and cruel. And as Maria wrung out her towel and whispered a soft prayer under her breath, Emma felt something stir inside her, a quiet, defiant sense that this couldn't be the end of it. It was only the beginning. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the cleaner. All through lunch with her father's executives, their laughter and talk of mergers felt like noise, empty, brittle noise. She smiled when spoken to, nodded at the right moments, but her mind kept circling back to the image of the woman on her knees, wiping water from the marble floor as though scrubbing away her own worth. That night, When the building had emptied and the city lights glittered against the tower's glass, Emma slipped back down to the lobby. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. An apology that hadn't been given, maybe, or just a trace of the truth. The cleaner's cart was gone, the floor dry and spotless as if nothing had happened. But at the far corner, the security guard, an older man with a kind face, recognized her. "Evening, Miss Vale," he said, standing a little straighter. "Evening," she replied softly. "Do you know the cleaner from this morning? The one who was here when my father spoke to her?" The guard hesitated, glancing toward the cameras before lowering his voice. "That's Maria. Works the morning shift. Good woman. Quiet. Doesn't cause trouble. Do you know what happens to her now?" He sighed. "HR called her in this afternoon. I don't know what was said, but she left early. Looked shaken. She's got enough problems already." Emma frowned. "What kind of problems?" The man shifted awkwardly. "Her boy's been sick. Been in and out of the hospital for months. She's been taking extra shifts to pay for treatments. Doesn't talk about it much." A flicker of disbelief crossed Emma's face. "Her son's sick." "That's right," the guard said. "Heart condition, I think. Real sweet kid. I heard she takes him to St. Gregory's, the charity hospital. Been there for years." Emma thanked him and walked out into the night air, her heart thudding. Her father had always boasted about the Vale Foundation's contributions to St. Gregory's. Every charity gala, every press conference, he spoke about giving back, as though it were his personal crusade. And yet, the woman who scrubbed his floors was struggling to save her son in the very hospital that bore his name. The next morning, she took a cab across town to St. Gregory's. The building was smaller than she remembered, its paint peeling in places, but the lobby smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and hope. A nurse at the desk recognized her from photographs and offered a polite smile. "Miss Vale, your father's done so much for us. Are you here to see the director?" Emma hesitated. "Actually, I'm looking for a patient. A boy. His mother's name is Maria. I think she works for my father's company." The nurse's expression softened. "Ah, little Matteo. He's in the children's ward. Been here off and on. Brave kid." The ward was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft chatter of cartoons on a nearby TV. Emma spotted Maria sitting by a small bed, her head bowed over a notebook, lips moving silently as she checked off bills and scribbled notes. The boy lying in the bed had a tangle of curls and a smile that seemed too big for his frail frame. When Maria looked up and saw Emma, surprise flickered across her tired face. "Miss Vale." Emma stepped forward, her voice gentle. "I'm sorry for coming unannounced. I wanted to see how you were." Maria blinked, unsure how to respond. "You shouldn't trouble yourself, miss. I know your father's busy. I'll be fine." Emma shook her head. "He shouldn't have spoken to you that way. And you shouldn't have to worry about losing your job while caring for your son." She glanced toward the boy. "Matteo, right?" Maria nodded, her eyes softening. "He's my whole world." The boy grinned weakly. "Hi," he said, voice small but bright. "Mom says you live in a castle." Emma laughed quietly. "Not quite a castle, just a tall building." Maria tried to smile, but the exhaustion in her face told its own story. Emma looked around the modest ward, the peeling wallpaper, the chipped paint, the machines that hummed quietly, and felt her stomach twist. Her father donated millions here every year, yet it was still barely surviving. As she left, she paused by the doorway, watching Maria hold her son's hand and whisper softly to him. The cleaner's uniform was gone, replaced by a simple cardigan, but the humility was the same. Outside, Emma stood on the hospital steps, the autumn wind tugging at her hair. Her father's world, polished, ruthless, and efficient, suddenly seemed smaller than ever. He could fire a woman for a spill, but he couldn't see the life she carried on her shoulders. Emma took out her phone and stared at her father's contact name for a long moment. Then she locked the screen and slipped it back into her pocket. She knew now that when she spoke to him again, it couldn't be with anger alone. It had to be with truth, and proof strong enough to pierce his pride. Dinner at the Vale Mansion was always a ceremony, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and silence served alongside the meal. The dining room was vast, its long table gleaming under a chandelier that scattered light like broken glass. Emma sat across from her father, her napkin folded neatly in her lap, watching him cut into his steak with the same precision he used to dismantle opponents in business. He was in a good mood tonight. The markets had rallied, a new contract was closing, and he spoke in measured tones about quarterly growth and future expansion. His voice filled the space easily, confident and unchallenged. Emma barely touched her food. Her mind was still at the hospital, the small boy with tired eyes, the mother who had smiled through shame, the quiet truth her father didn't know. When the housekeeper came to clear the soup plates, Emma took a breath. "Dad," she said carefully, "can I ask you something?" Richard Vale didn't look up. "Of course. You're unusually quiet tonight. University life too dull already?" "Not exactly," she said, forcing a smile. "I went to St. Gregory's Hospital today." That made him pause, his knife hovering midair. "St. Gregory's. Why on earth would you go there?" "I wanted to see the foundation's work firsthand," she replied. "You always talk about it with such pride. I thought I should understand what we're really doing." His mouth softened into a small, self-satisfied smile. "Good. It's important to see how philanthropy functions in the real world. We fund dozens of beds there. It's one of our most successful outreach programs." Emma nodded slowly. "Do you know a woman named Maria who works at your company?" He frowned slightly, trying to recall. "There are hundreds of staff, Emma. I don't memorize the cleaning roster." "She's the cleaner you fired yesterday," Emma said quietly. The air between them changed. The housekeeper froze halfway to the kitchen door, uncertain whether to stay or go. Richard's voice grew cold. "We don't need to discuss internal staffing decisions over dinner." "But you should," Emma said, her voice trembling now but gaining strength with every word. "Because Maria's son, Matteo, is one of the children being treated at St. Gregory's. The same hospital your foundation funds. The same hospital you tell the world represents compassion and community." Richard's fork clinked softly against his plate. "What are you talking about?" "I met them," Emma pressed on. "She works herself sick just to keep him alive. And you humiliated her in front of everyone because she spilled a bit of water. Do you know what that job means to her? What it pays for?" He leaned back slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Emma, you don't understand how a company is run. Discipline matters. If I allow negligence, it spreads. It's not personal, it's principle." She stared at him, her voice breaking. "Principle? Is it principle to destroy someone's dignity because you had a bad morning? You built this empire, Dad, but somewhere along the way you forgot it's made of people. You fund hospitals for the cameras, but you can't look at the cleaner who keeps your building shining." For the first time, he didn't answer immediately. The usual composure faltered, his jaw clenched, then relaxed. "You think I don't care?" he said at last, quieter now. "Everything I do, everything, is to keep this company strong. Without it, there would be no foundation, no hospitals, no donations. You don't hold an empire together with sympathy." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "No, you hold it together with humanity, or it's not worth anything." Silence hung heavy. The ticking of the clock grew loud in the stillness. Richard looked away, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond her, beyond the dinner table, as if trying to find the point where he'd lost sight of himself. Finally, he exhaled and set down his knife. "This, Maria, you said her son's at St. Gregory's." Emma nodded. "He's a beautiful boy. He thinks I live in a castle." A faint, almost reluctant smile tugged at his lips before fading again. "I'll look into it." Emma didn't respond. She just watched him, wondering if it was guilt or genuine realization flickering behind his eyes. When the housekeeper returned with dessert, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with everything unsaid. The pride he clung to, the empathy she demanded. As the meal ended, Richard rose first. He adjusted his cufflinks, his movements slower than usual. "You have your mother's heart," he murmured, almost to himself. "Sometimes I forget what that looks like." He left the room without another word. Emma sat there alone for a long while, listening to the echo of his footsteps fading down the hall. Somewhere deep down, she sensed something had cracked. Not a clean break, but a fracture in the armor he'd worn for years. It wasn't victory, but it was a beginning. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of Vale Tower, soft and golden, touching the marble floors that had once reflected only cold perfection. The building felt different that day, quieter somehow, as though the air itself was waiting for something. The employees whispered when they saw the CEO step out of the elevator alone, no entourage, no flurry of assistants. Richard Vale's stride was still steady, but there was something new in his eyes, something uncertain. He walked toward the lobby where Maria usually began her shift. The sight of her cleaning cart, neatly arranged beside the pillars, stirred something uncomfortable in his chest. She was there, on her knees, scrubbing a faint mark near the entrance. For a moment, he simply watched her. The humility in her work, the care in every movement, it was the opposite of the careless image he had painted in anger. Maria looked up when she sensed someone standing nearby. The moment her eyes met his, she froze, rag in hand. "Mr. Vale," she said softly, rising. To her feet, he cleared his throat, unused to the awkward weight in his voice. "Maria," he began, "I owe you an apology." Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. No one had ever seen Richard Vale apologize, not even his senior executives. He continued, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "What I said the other morning was uncalled for. I let frustration guide my temper, and I spoke without understanding your circumstances. I've learned since then." Maria blinked, unsure what to say. "Sir, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted, his voice quieter now. "You've worked here for 10 years. That kind of loyalty deserves respect, not humiliation. I was wrong." For a heartbeat, silence lingered between them. Then he added, "Your job is secure. In fact, you're being promoted, head of the cleaning staff. Effective immediately, and there'll be a pay raise." Maria's lips parted in disbelief. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just keep doing what you do. This building shines because of you." Her eyes shimmered. She nodded, whispering, "Thank you, Mr. Vale, truly." He gave a brief nod and turned to leave, but stopped. "And, Maria, tell Matteo I said hello." Maria's hand flew to her mouth, tears escaping freely now. "You went to see him?" "Not yet," he said, his tone softening, "but I intend to." Later that afternoon, Richard's car pulled up outside Street Gregory's hospital. The last time he'd been there was for a photo op, flashes of cameras, polite speeches, and a smile rehearsed for headlines. But this time, he walked in quietly, without announcement, carrying a small box wrapped in silver paper. The nurse at the desk recognized him instantly and guided him to the children's ward. Inside, laughter echoed faintly from a TV playing cartoons. Maria stood by her son's bed, reading aloud from a picture book. When she saw Richard, she straightened, uncertain if she should speak. Matteo, curious, turned his bright eyes toward the tall man in the doorway. "Are you the man from Mom's work?" the boy asked. Richard smiled faintly and stepped closer. "Yes, I am, and I owe your mom a lot." He handed the boy the small box. Inside was a model airplane, painted deep blue with tiny golden wings. "I used to build these when I was your age," Richard said. "It helped me dream big." Matteo's face lit up. "It's amazing. Thank you, sir." Maria's hand brushed her son's hair gently. Her eyes met Richard's, and in that silent exchange, years of power and pride melted into something human. When he left the hospital, the city outside looked different. The glass towers that once symbolized his success now seemed smaller, less important. As he stepped into his car, he saw Emma waiting by the entrance, her arms crossed but a smile tugging at her lips. "So," she said, "you went." "I did," he answered quietly. "You were right. About everything." Emma studied his face for a moment, then smiled wider. "He's a great kid, isn't he?" "The best reminder I've had in years," Richard said. They stood there for a while, side by side, watching the bustle of the street, ordinary people moving through ordinary lives, each one carrying their own unseen burdens. As they turned to leave, Richard looked back at the hospital once more. "You gave me back my eyes," he murmured. Emma slipped her arm through his. "Then keep them open, Dad." He nodded, a small, genuine smile breaking through at last. And as they walked away together, the hard edges of his world began to soften, not through wealth or power, but through something far rarer, understanding.